on Films Gone Wild. We're going to be talking about the documentary Fish and Men. We have our two directors. We've got Adam Jones and Darby Duffin. And we have one of the subjects, Chef Michael. And Michael, introduce, because I didn't get your pronunciation of your name first, and I don't want to mess it up. So please introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, the name is Michael Smaresti.
Okay, all right. And before we start, or I guess as part of the start, Adam, Darby, one of you two take the honors of introducing our audience to the film who have not had a chance to see it as yet. What is Fish and Men about?
So Fish and Men, we say called The High Cost of Cheap Fish. It is a film that introduces you into the world of commercial fishing as well as the global seafood trade. And it's sort of the story about knowing, we call the true story of seafood, knowing where your seafood comes from. So we kind of pull the veil back on the story about your seafood, something people might not think a lot about. But I think once considering the question, they're quite interested in it. So we're giving you a glimpse into the world of commercial fishing, some of the challenges that these professionals have, the dangers, the risks that they put, personal risks that they put themselves into to harvest the world's last wild-caught protein. And at the same time, we're sharing with you from a macro perspective what the global seafood trade looks like, that which serves to fulfill the demands of our current global demand for our taste in seafood, and provide you a little insight into where that comes from. So kind of originally pitched this as Deadliest Catch Meets Food Inc. And at the end of the film, we're gonna show you some of the work that's being done to overcome some of these challenges.
Well, you know, as I was watching the film, I was very interested to talk to you guys to see how difficult it was to not make this into a series of films, because you easily could have split this off into 3 to 4 to 5 different films, because it is a very tough look at how the fishing community has dealt with overfishing, you know, how they've worked and not worked with governments. It's very much a call to action film when we're talking about you know, how we do consume fish and what have you. And it's admirable that you guys were able to wrestle this thing down to the ground, and you know, and like I said, in the runtime that, you know, the hour and a half or so runtime of the film, do that. We're joined here. Hey. Awesome.
Richard Burgess, welcome.
Fantastic. Awesome. All right, Richard, wonderful to have you here as well. Great. And this is great because now I can go both to Richard and to Michael. And I want to start off with Michael. But when you guys are subjects in a film, when you have, like, you know, dudes like Adam and Darby rolling with their cameras and their questions, and you know, and you know, they want to shine a light on what the hell is going on with you and what has been going on with you. There's a lot of trust there. There's either a lot of trust because you're opening up your life, or there's a lot of trust because this is a cause that means a lot to you. So Michael, talk about that from your perspective of, you know, of letting these guys in, and what that meant to get your message out there.
Can't hear you.
Oh, Michael, I think your sound is off. You're muted.
Unmute. All right.
There you go. There we go.
I came to know Darby and Adam through a friend and a colleague who had started the Dr. Dish program in Montauk, New York. And his name's Sean Barrett, and he's also in the film. And so I helped with Sean and another person, Sarah Rathbone, who's also in the film. We all sort of helped found the Los Angeles chapter of Dr. Dish. And and I figure I know where Sean's heart is, and I know where Sarah's heart is, and how important sustainable seafood and a new model for sustainable seafood is to the two of them. And so I figured if they brought Adam and Darby in to be into Providence, my restaurant, to capture some of the work that we were doing, I felt like obviously these two guys must have a set of goals for the film that are aligned with my own goals and with Sean's goals and with Sarah's goals. And so I figured it was easy to put trust in them. Yeah.
Great. And now, Richard, I want to go to you because the portions of the film where the guys are talking to you and you are letting us in on the struggles and the fight that you've been going through, it's remarkable. And it's almost, I don't think it's overstating it to say that for a viewer, it's a blessing to have a guy like you be that frank, be that honest, and let us in. And again, there's a lot of trust there. So talk about that when these guys approached you and your thoughts about participating in the film.
Sure, and thank you very much. But I honestly don't remember when we got together. I mean, Darby and Adam can probably help out.
Yeah.
Months since then.
I found Rich's name and Russell's name both. As I mentioned, there was some research that had been done prior, just getting a sense of the landscape. And both Rich and Russell, had been in some of the stories that had been reported in the Boston Globe and local news. So that was sort of how the discovery happened. And then it was. I can't remember where I got Rich's number, but somebody gave me. I was looking for his number. I got a hold of him. And I just cold called Rich and just, which is a hard thing to do because, as Rich can probably attest to, it's not the easiest community or probably industry just to walk in and say, hey, I want to start doing a documentary on your life and your struggling. Films that have been made in the past that probably weren't so authentic and transparent and fair and balanced, on the industry and what was happening. So I think there was that's what I knew going in, was that there was probably a fair amount of suspicion perhaps, but Rich was open and generous and willing to talk and invited us down, and that's how it started. Rich's interview with us, that was one of the first interviews we actually did. I think it was the first interview other than the first shoot was the Boston Fish Pier that happened a few days earlier. But I think it was a few weeks later. That was the first interview we did. Yeah. And
Adam, I want to bring you in next, and I want you to address something that I found fascinating and about the film, and because it so illustrates something that I think about when it in terms of our country in particular, that we alternatively have the ability as people to do the absolute worst thing possible, and then turn right around and do the most remarkable, innovative thing to save our asses at afterwards. And and this film remarkably encompasses both of those things. And I would love you to talk about from your perspective and from your years and Darby's approach to this, as to how that kind of found its way into the film, or did you kind of have that in the back of your mind going into it in the beginning?
Oh man, you ask a really tough question there. It's like admit your hypocrisy. It's true though. I remember one time Darby and I were asked to speak at the aquarium in Long Beach, California, when we only had a 10-minute sizzle put together of this film and an idea, a pitch basically. And they were super nice. They had us over to their beautiful theater over there. We had a panel put together with some folks from NOAA, and also somebody from Santa Monica Seafood was at the panel. I'm sure Michael probably knows who, her name escapes me, but, and there were very different perspectives. And I remember walking out of there and having sort of a candid off the cuff conversation with this woman where she said, and she kind of took that I don't know, I want to call it cynical position on how, like, how can we expect to make a film that's going to change people's minds so that they can go and really think about the fish that they're purchasing, say at their retail touch point, whatever it is. But at the same time, they'll wheel their cart into the next aisle and throw a bunch of Coca-Cola products straight into it. And I honestly, I kind of just wanted to walk away from that question, because I don't know. I mean, as filmmakers, like, why did we decide to pick up this ball and run with it for 6 years until it was done? And, you know, thank God we can sit here and be talking about this now. And I guess talking about this now is part of the answer to that. You know, it's like you just, at some point as a filmmaker, you got to pick a path. There were so many paths that we could have picked making this, you know. I mean, I moved to the West Coast during the making of this film, where it's like I would give people the elevator pitch of what it's about, and they go, oh, well, what about mercury? You know, my wife is pregnant. Or, hey, what about Fukushima? I hear all the fish is radioactive now. Or, hey, what about the slaves on the shrimp boats over in Thailand? You know, that's terrible. And we're like, listen, we had to pick a path for this film. And the light of the path was lit by A, you know, Atlantic cod, B, the community of Gloucester and the fishermen that are there, you know, and C, how we realize that it's really the consumer demand that is driving so much of this. And what is that determined by? Well, a lot of it's, you know, chefs are the gatekeepers to the palate. So we chose that path, which was something that we didn't choose until about 3 years into it. So, you know, going back to the first question you asked about, like, how do you synthesize all this stuff? It's really, really hard. And by the way, if you know anybody who wants to buy this as a doc series, we're more than willing to recut it for a small fee. So yeah, it's a mouthful.
Well, you know, again, that's the thing, that when we're talking about a film like this, we go, what kind of difference can it make? But again, I watch a lot of environmental documentaries because I do the PR for the Earth X Film Festival, and and so I see films on many topics on here, and the one thing that always strikes me about this is that even if you're on the right side, so to speak, to try to support the right changes, the right policy changes, or what have you. Numbers are numbers. How many fishing families are left in Gloucester? Those are numbers, and even the best of us have difficulty putting a face to those numbers, putting a voice to those numbers. And and even when it comes to the chefs doing amazing work, to literally do positive things as far as doing catch of the day, as opposed to the same like 3 white fishes, that in the middle of the country, they're eating nonstop. Even then, we still need to see that in action, because otherwise it's a concept, right? And so, to me, that is the beauty of a documentary like this. And again, I want to go back to our 2 subjects really quickly, and talk, and again, Michael, you go first, because you're obviously impassioned about this, and again, it's like, well, and how do I get that out there, other than a handful of my friends, or even a handful of people in an audience when I'm allowed to speak on a panel, or a bunch of people on a Facebook thread? How do I get that out there? And here you're given an opportunity to do that, and talk just for a moment about your thought. Again, these guys are asking you questions. They've got a camera on you. Are you just like, just kind of rolling with it, going, well, okay, we'll do this one? Or are you thinking, something, I really want somebody to hear this, what I have to say?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I feel like my thoughts on, what sustainable fish, or how important that whole subject is to me, I felt like I just wanted to, speak the truth to Darby and Adam, and just you know, give them a realistic picture of where we were and what was happening, and you know, and I feel like you know, you talk about change, and I feel like change happens in, you know, in very like small but measurable ways. And you know, here in Los Angeles, when we started the Dr. Dish program, you know, there were several species of fish that were just not seen on menus in Los Angeles. Period. They just were not. But yet they were being harvested in San Diego and Santa Barbara and Oxnard and Ventura, you know, all ports within 200 miles of the restaurant. Now, you know, to find like fish like rockfish or ocean whitefish or black cod from California and Southern California and not from Alaska, um, on people's menus in Los Angeles is not an uncommon thing at all. As a matter of fact, like the small and incremental change that we were able to make with Dr. Dishes, you know, really kind of like changed what menus look like in a certain way with a certain group of restaurants here in Los Angeles. And I was talking to one of a good friend of mine who's a fisherman up in Santa Barbara, a commercial guy. We were just talking about all the developments that the pandemic has brought about, not only for us in restaurants, but also for fishermen, you know, and he's, you know, finding a way through all of this by going direct to the consumer. So before he would sell his fish to me and we would sell to other restaurants, or we would sell it within our own restaurant. Now he's selling direct to restaurants because a lot of the restaurant clients that he had are not able to you know, be open for guests. And so, you know, change finds a way of happening, you know, like these guys, like this group of fishermen that I've come to know here in Southern California that we source almost all of our menu from, they've found a silver lining in this pandemic in that they've had to go direct to consumers. And so now consumers can stand across a table at a farmer's market or at a fisherman's market from the people that are actually catching the fish and learn their names, learn the names of their families, learn the name of their fishing vessel, and learn a little bit about their struggle as they have that little conversation across the table buying a piece of fish for their family. And this is something that, you know, this is a silver lining that the pandemic has provided to a lot of the fishermen that I know here in Southern California. And I hope, you know, that going forward, once we get out of this, that people learn to value that relationship, that people learn to value the hard work that American fishermen put in and day out to bring their catch to market, and that they understand that their actions in the marketplace make a difference. You know, if you go and you track something down at the Ventura Fisherman's Market, as opposed to going to your local supermarket and buying salmon that was farm raised in Chile to the detriment of the Chilean environment, and you figure out that that makes a difference in somebody's lives, maybe your neighbor's life, you know, those are very like small actions that create big change. And as long as those things are those changes are scalable, and as long as they're happening, you know, in communities outside of Southern California, if they're happening on the East Coast, if they're happening in the Gulf, if they're happening in Seattle, you know, then this is how you make change. You know what I mean? On a larger scale. And yes, these are all questions of privilege, I believe, because here in the United States, we have the privilege to make those kinds of choices. You know, of course, there are people that are food insecure in the States, but, and we've got to figure out a way to make that happen too, so that there's, you know, so that, you know, hunger is not an issue. It needs to be wiped out. But as long as we're talking about the subject of, you know, sustainable fisheries and how we as consumers can enact change the market, that this is how change happens. You know what I mean?
Right. And then Richard, I wanted to get back to you one more time too, because, you know, in the film we see you and guys like you, you know, speaking at hearings, you know, to try to affect policy, and, you know, and speaking, you know, out and getting your voice heard. You know, and there's a thing that, you know, if you do like an interview, say on a news program, well, then that for the news cycle, boom, it's out there and great, you've been heard. But when you're in a documentary like this, it's really it's literally is going to live forever. It's going to be out there forever, you know. And it's like when we say when something happens, you know, and you're written about on the internet and it becomes Google-rific, it's going to be there. You know, when people look up this topic, they look up your name, you know, they're going to find you, and they're going to find this. And I wonder, and again, because, you know, having heard your story and your experience up now, is that heartening at all? for you to know that now that there is, this film now exists, and, and it's, people are not going to forget about this tomorrow, because they will eventually be able to find this film. Whether or not they see this film today, they see it next week, when it eventually gets distribution, and it's, it's out there, whether it be, on, Amazon or iTunes or whatever, people will be able to resource this film. Do you find any, does that help at all for you to know that is now out there?
Oh, absolutely. I'm very thankful for Darby and Adam to, take the time to come to me and listen to me, because you're right, going to, I'd get endless phone calls from the media, news stations, whatever you want. And they basically ask you a million questions. Then they come out with the answer is no is right. The fishery service is right. Nothing's really bad happening. Well, there is a lot of stuff bad happening. But no, I'm very thankful it's come out. And it's made a big difference. I think people are starting to understand what's really happening. The fishing industry here is basically doom and gloom, because the fishery service wanted a small portion of people still fishing, so it's easily managed. It's got nothing to do with the amount of fish in the ocean. Look at the amount of fish that's coming from other countries. When we have all that fish off our coast, and we can't target them. Yeah. That's very sad. But I'm really happy that the two of them, took a lot of time to listen to me and try to get things out, in my perspective, in my picture, and I'm thankful for it.
And Darby and Adam, I want to finish up with the two of you. And sometimes when filmmakers make a film like this, they become de facto experts on the topic, and so therefore they didn't just make a film. Now they're going to be asked to speak on it, and now they're going to be asked to be part of those panels and and those think tanks and what have you, because they were immersed in this topic for so long, and with the research that now they are de facto scholars. One, has that kind of happened by this point yet? And two, do you relish that, or do you go, okay, that's just a burden we're going to have to bear now?
Well, that's why we invite Mike and Rich to they can hit the hit the ball in their wheelhouse. But no, you're right. Of course, you're bringing up very serious topics, and these are important issues, and we're putting forth solutions. So I guess we have to stand behind that and sort of defend it. Why did we make the choices we made? Those were all made over a series of years, and it was like we talked about at the beginning, there was a lot of research. I've spent 2 years reading issues and then understanding, getting a better perspective once meeting different people that, all needed have their perspectives included. So we just worked very hard at making sure we included all voices that were part of this conversation. We didn't want to exclude even, we as filmmakers, we could have vilified certain people that you see in the film, and certainly some people would have been happy about that. The goal was to be as authentic as we could, to tell the most accurate story that we could, for people to understand these variety of perspectives that go into a very challenging problem. And then we couldn't stop there. We had to offer some kind of solutions. If we just showed you, the audience, the problems and then just left it hanging there, it would not be for a very interesting film. So it took a lot of work to find what these potential solutions could be, and there's certainly by no means silver bullets. So Adam and I talk a lot about why we made those choices. We think they're good ones. The work that Michael's doing with Dr. Dish, and we talk and speak to science, and why we went to Norway to offer some of these ideas about how perhaps the industry could be better regulated and better managed. But ultimately, with the consumers, the conversation, for me personally, I like it to go in that direction, because Michael's talking about, Rich is living proof of, where this has taken us in 2020. This demand-based system is, the country flooded with imported seafood because the market's gonna, the global seafood trade is gonna say, okay, this is what you demand. We will get this from. Just don't ask where it came from. So I think it's an awareness raising venture that I welcome the questions, because, you know, I would put a challenge out for people that watch the film to ask themselves, do I ever think about, or have I ever thought about where the seafood comes from, and then the choices I make as a consumer. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No. I think it did. But I'll finish up with Adam very quickly with this question. You know, are you now going to supermarkets and telling people, don't buy the tilapia? Don't.
Yeah. I don't mind making tilapia the brunt of a joke, that's for sure. Going back to what you'd asked before, the de facto expert thing, I just wanted to also mention on that point that this is mine and Darby's first documentary feature. And I'd like, for example, I direct branded content and commercials. I've been doing that for 20 years, and I've been on film sets my entire adult life. Making and completing and actually getting to a Q&A in a festival with a completed, finished project that took us 6 years of many, many wrong paths followed and many mistakes. What this film did was actually give Darby and I, for better or for worse, a little bit of a film degree on how to make a documentary and the things to do and not do. So there were some dark days, you know, along this road where we were like, are we ever going to finish? Are we ever going to really truly validate and honor all of the time and effort and money that not just us, but like our families and people like Rich and Michael? I mean, there were times where they hadn't heard from us for over a year or so. And they're just like probably wondering if it's ever going to get finished. So the act of finishing, I think, is one huge bonus in making this for us, and where it could hopefully take us for the next film. It's like having kids, or it's like being in combat. I imagine you just can't understand it unless you've gone through it. So I was like, oh, well, you know, if no one ever sees it, if it never sees the light of day, at least I learned this. And then, of course, the education about the fishing industry. But I forgot, what was the real question you asked me?
No, I think you got it. I will leave you guys. I will leave Adam and Darby, you two, with this. I did PR for a film where the filmmaker Heather Ray. It took her 13 years to make the film, and she had 2 kids in between the time she started the film and finished it. So, you know, 6 years, you guys got off easy.
Well, it's, you know, you're not kidding, because once you start talking to first-time feature doc makers, they're like, yeah, well, 6 years isn't bad.
5 years seems to, yeah, it's like the mean. It's right there.
Well, listen, you know, I think it's such, you know, and you almost kind of hate saying this because you don't want this to be devalued, but I think it truly is an important film. And you know, and I can't underline that enough, and you know, and I don't, and I mean that absolutely sincerely. And you know, great that we were able to hear the voices of the people that you spoke to, and great that you were able to, like I say, wrestle this into a coherent film that truly delivers, you know, a cause to action, and yet also shows us the people behind that call to action. So congratulations to all of you on the film. Fisherman, it's been great talking to you all.
Thank you, John.
Appreciate it.